So I want to begin with your reaction to President Trump's suggestion that Russia had the right to bomb the hell out of Ukraine. This, of course, after he blamed both Ukraine and Russia for the war and belittled President Zelensky at the White House. If Trump is serious about wanting peace, are these kind of statements supporting that goal?
Trump may be serious about wanting peace in principle, but he's clearly not willing to take the steps that would be required to apply the pressure on Russia to stop its attacks. And he made that clear when he told us indirectly that he does not support the congressional legislation, right? This is the major new initiative from the U.S. Senate that would apply secondary sanctions to those countries still purchasing Russian petroleum and fueling the war machine. And he basically said, I'm not going to sign that. That's too disruptive to our trade. Without that, he does not have any other levers to pressure Moscow to halt the attacks. And so he's stepping back and letting the war go on.
Yeah. And I mean, we heard that comparison he made between Ukraine and Russia, comparing them to two children fighting, and said they should be allowed to fight for a bit longer before you pull them apart. From your perspective, what are the strategic and the humanitarian risks of prolonging this war, both for Ukraine and for Europe?
You know, I'm afraid we're at a very serious juncture now where it's not just more of the same ahead for another 3 or 6 months, but much worse, right? Because the Ukrainians have shown with their new drone coordinated attacks, their own missile production, that they can inflict much more serious damage on Russian military bases, Russian arms productions, and civilians are killed along with that. And of course, Russia can ramp up its attacks and be even more reckless than it has been, which will take more civilian lives. So I see a very dangerous phase ahead with more and more attacks and the likelihood of collateral damage striking maybe a chemical factory, even some kind of nuclear fuel storage facility where we'll have not just dozens, but hundreds of civilian casualties each time. It could get a lot worse in the coming months.
So I want to ask you about the progress in terms of any sort of peace talks, because we know Donald Trump spoke recently with President Putin. He said the conversations were good, but he said peace is a long way off. From a European standpoint, what would actually need to happen diplomatically or militarily to move the needle towards a ceasefire or a resolution?
It doesn't seem there's much that the outside powers can do. Europe can't act alone. That is clear. They don't have the arms production capacity to replace what the U.S. has been giving Ukraine, much less the intelligence, surveillance, and targeting assistance. And Donald Trump doesn't have the will to ramp up U.S. aid to Ukraine or to, as I said, apply that pressure to Russia. So the two sides are, as Trump said, going to continue fighting until they punch themselves out. And that's how these, major wars often end, when both sides understand they haven't got much else left to gain and, in fact, much to lose from continuing. Right now, their positions are so far apart, and neither is convinced that they've got the best deal they can. And so the fighting will continue, absent any outside ability to change that. And we don't see that ability in evidence.
And in the last few days, we heard NATO members, debating whether to increase defense spending. We're also seeing these regional initiatives emerge, such as the Weimar Plus group. Talk to us about that initiative and how it could play a part going forward to potentially ending this war.
I'm afraid it cannot play a very big part at all, whether it's the Coalition of the Willing, this Weimar group, or any other European, gathering or organized group attempting to increase aid to Ukraine. And that's what these amount to. Europe is torn and divided. You have elections showing this continuing shift to the right, this war weariness. We have deepening European economic problems that make big defense increases very problematic. And everywhere we see European public opinion tired of the war and just want to see it end and are no longer supporting Ukraine through to victory. So this will become more and more problematic to European governments trying to keep Ukraine in the fight.